On July 1st, 2026, Princess Diana would have turned 65. Kensington Palace planned absolutely nothing public for the day. No official portraits. No formal statements. Yet by sunset, a quiet gesture from 11-year-old Princess Charlotte left palace staff fighting back tears. She did not release a statement. She did not stand before a camera. Instead, she made a single private request that changed how her family remembers the grandmother she never met. It was a moment the palace did not script. It was a moment they could not have predicted. And it all started with a small 3-strand pearl bracelet. To understand why this moment hit so hard, we have to look at the math of royal grief. Princess Diana died in August 1997. Princess Charlotte was born in May 2015. That is an 18-year gap. Charlotte grew up surrounded by a ghost. Diana is everywhere in her world. She is in the paintings on the walls. She is in the stories her father tells before bed. She is even in Charlotte's full legal name, Charlotte Elizabeth Diana, but for a young child, a grandmother cannot just be a name. She cannot just be a portrait behind glass. For years, Prince William and Princess Catherine protected their children from the heavy, complex parts of Diana's history. They kept the stories simple. They kept them light. But as Charlotte approached her 11th birthday, that protective wall began to change. Just weeks before the July anniversary, the public got its first clue. At Trooping the Color, Charlotte wore a delicate 3-strand pearl bracelet. Royal watchmakers recognized it instantly. It was a custom Nigel Milne piece originally designed for Diana in 1988. Catherine had inherited the authentic bracelet. Charlotte was wearing a perfect scaled-down replica. The media called it a sweet fashion choice. They thought it was just a mother sharing jewelry with her daughter. But behind the scenes, something much more deliberate was happening. Charlotte was not just playing dress-up. She was asking questions. Real, deep questions. An 11-year-old child is in a unique position. She is old enough to understand that her family is different. She is old enough to read the headlines about her grandmother. According to royal biographer Duncan Larcombe, this is the exact age where the sanitized version of history stops working. Children want the truth. Catherine knew this day would come. According to reports from Hello magazine, Catherine has spent years preparing for it. She did not want Diana to be a myth to her children. She wanted her to feel like a real person. Catherine wanted Charlotte to know the Diana who laughed too loud. The Diana who snuck her boys out of the palace for hamburgers. The Diana who walked through an active minefield in Angola. But Catherine did not push these stories on her daughter. She waited. She waited for Charlotte to ask first. When July 1st arrived, the palace kept its public face perfectly still. There were no social media tributes on the official royal accounts. There were no wreaths laid at Kensington Palace gates. The family wanted a quiet Wednesday at home. But inside the house, Charlotte had her own plan. First, she made a small request. She asked to wear the pearl bracelet again. Not for a public appearance, not for a photo shoot. She wanted to wear it while doing her schoolwork and playing in the garden. She wanted to feel the physical connection to her grandmother all day long. Then came the second request. And this is where the mood in the household shifted. Charlotte sat down with Catherine. She did not ask about Diana's fame. She did not ask about her titles. She asked, "Tell me something about her that nobody else knows." This was the open loop Catherine had been waiting to close. She did not give a rehearsed, palace-approved response. Instead, she shared a small domestic habit of Diana's that never made the history books. She told Charlotte about Diana's love for pressing flowers. Whenever Diana walked through the gardens of Highgrove or Kensington, she would pick small, wild blossoms. She would slip them into her personal diaries, pressing them flat between the pages. It was her way of keeping a physical piece of a beautiful day forever. It was a quiet, private habit. It was something she did only for herself. When Charlotte heard this, she didn't just smile. She stood up. She asked if she could go into the garden and try it herself. According to a household source who spoke to a British tabloid, several members of the staff watched from the windows. They saw the young princess wearing her grandmother's pearl bracelet, bending down to pick forget-me-nots, Diana's favorite flower. She brought them inside. She carefully placed them inside one of her own favorite books. The room went completely silent. The staff and even the family members present were visibly moved. Some were fighting back tears. It was not because of a grand speech. It was because they realized something profound. For the first time in nearly 30 years, Diana's memory was not being managed by a public relations team. It was being lived by an 11-year-old girl who simply wanted to walk in her grandmother's footsteps. The physical similarities between Charlotte and Diana have been noticed for years. Royal experts frequently point them out. Ingrid Seward, the editor of Majesty magazine, has written extensively about this connection. It is not just the shape of their eyes. It is the way they carry themselves. Charlotte has that same direct, steady eye contact that Diana used to disarm world leaders. She has the same quick, bright smile that made people feel instantly welcome. But physical traits are just a roll of the genetic dice. The real connection is behavioral. And that is where William and Catherine's parenting style comes into play. Diana was a revolutionary royal because she broke down barriers. She refused to wear gloves when shaking hands with patients. She took her young sons to homeless shelters so they could see the real world. She wanted them to feel empathy, not just duty. William has carried that lesson into his own household. He does not want his children to grow up in a gilded bubble. By allowing Charlotte to explore Diana's history on her own terms, he is letting her inherit her grandmother's spirit, not just her jewelry. What happened on July 1st was proof that this parenting strategy is working. Charlotte did not demand a grand public celebration. She did not ask for a headline. She chose a quiet, private action. That choice shows a level of emotional maturity that is rare for an 11-year-old. It is a trait she shares deeply with the woman she was named after. For almost 3 decades, the royal family has struggled with a difficult question. How do you honor Princess Diana without letting her memory overshadow the current monarchy? It is a delicate balance. If the palace ignores her anniversaries, the public accuses them of being cold. If they celebrate her too loudly, they risk reopening old wounds and distracting from the work of King Charles and Queen Camilla. For years, the solution was institutional distance. Official anniversaries were marked with pre-planned events. Memorabilia was carefully curated. Statues were commissioned and unveiled with formal speeches. But Diana was never an institutional person. She famously said she wanted to be a queen of people's hearts, not a statue behind a velvet rope. And that is why Charlotte's quiet afternoon was so powerful. It bypassed the entire PR machine. It did not require a press release from Kensington Palace. It did not need a stamp of approval from the king. It was a family moment, kept entirely within the walls of their home. By pressing those flowers, Charlotte did something the palace's public relations team could never achieve. She made Diana's memory feel personal again. She turned a global icon back into a beloved grandmother. As the sun set on July 1st, 2026, the quiet day on the royal calendar came to a close. To the outside world, nothing had happened. The news cycle moved on to other stories. The palace gates remained quiet. But inside Adelaide Cottage, a new tradition had been born. Princess Charlotte is no longer just a spectator to her grandmother's history. She is now an active participant in keeping it alive. The next time she looks at the portraits of Princess Diana, she won't just see a legendary historical figure. She will see a woman who loved the same simple things she does. Diana never got to see her 65th birthday. She never got to hold her granddaughter. But through a replica pearl bracelet, a curious question, and a few pressed flowers, she was exactly where she belonged. She was remembered. Not by the world, but by the child who carries her name. If you want to discover more quiet, untold stories about the people behind the royal titles, make sure to subscribe to Quiet Better. We bring you the real history, told simply and thoughtfully every single week.